This is Dawn Must Follow Night by Hunter Danson. Part 1, Chapter 16. Read by the author. Yarick grimaced and swung his feet out of bed on the moon of the evaluation. Although he had been running and training on his leg for weeks, it still felt weak, and probably would for the rest of his life. Kavar was awake and dressing. Yarick put on the leather eye patch that shielded the world from what had once been his left eye. It was misted over and distorted from the pressure wave. He caught Kavar staring. "What?" "It suits you." "Funny. Think I could be a jester?" "Oh, definitely. Though the lords might kick you on account of the desires of the noble wives." They laughed until their smiles faded. Kavar said, "Ready, friend?" Yarick answered by getting up, pulling on his tunic, lacing his boots, and striding towards the door. They walked across the courtyard in silence. Other students were starting to emerge from their bunks and make their way to the inner gate that led to the yard. In the orange glow cast by the sunrise, they looked like wraiths on their way to perform some bloody ritual. They exited the gate and joined their respective squads, forming lines perpendicular to the broken outer gate. Marith was flanked by the 4 instructors. He addressed the students. "This is your final evaluation. The cataclysm approaches. Blades will be chosen by this moon's results, with some consideration for past performances. Dawn be with you." He spoke the words without ceremony. The students knew what to do when he finished. They trotted past in single file, squads 1 and 2 on the right, 3 and 4 on the left. As they reached the broken gate, instructors handed each student a colored flag and a poison-coated training blade. The students then turned right and left to follow the path that led around the walls to the back of the castle where the maze waited. Yarick tied the blue flag around his arm and held his training blade away from his body. It would be a shame to cut himself on the way there and wake up the next moon. Not that he harbored any hopes of being chosen to join with the Black, but he hoped to preserve what was left of his pride. Squad 4 reached their designated entrance on the north side of the maze. They listened for the signal. A warm wind blew through the trees at their backs, carrying the smell of sulfur mixed with pine needles. The orange glow that had bathed the yard was now beginning to show traces of red. Yarick felt the wind stop, and then the cannon shot. The squad burst through the gate and the 2 scouts, Kavar and Horus, raced ahead to spot dead ends and chart a course through the maze to the center. Yarick, before the explosion, would have been in their place as the fastest in the squad, but he had been replaced by Horus and made the navigator. When they came to a fork, the 2 scouts would split and determine if the route had a dead end or not. If there was, the decision was easy. Just take the other fork. But if both were viable, the decision passed to Yarick, who, with the aid of a charcoal stick, was making a crude map on his hand. He did his best to keep their course pointed towards the flag. It was an effective system for the most part, though they did have to backtrack twice. The first major setback came when they were close enough to see the flagpole looming high above their heads. There was a fork in the maze, and as they had done many times already, Kavar shot to the left and Horus to the right. Kavar's shout came back moments later. "Dead end!" They waited for Horus's shrill voice, but it didn't return. Instead, there was a muffled cry and the clang of sword on sword, then silence. Peter and Hobb shot past Yarick. Yarick followed them and rounded the corner. They found Horus standing over an unconscious student much bigger than himself, an incredulous look on his face. We came around the corner and I just reacted like Dimitri showed us and it worked. He went down so fast, I can't believe it. Kavar smiled at the younger student. Well done, Horace. Now let's get... But he was cut off. The smaller boy reacted to something coming from his right, but too slow. A sword flashed out from the corner, and Horace toppled onto his just-defeated foe. The other students cursed and charged around the corner to meet 2 students from another squad, most likely comrades of the one that Horace had felled. Kavar, Hob, and Peter advanced, pressing the advantage they had in numbers. Though the walls of the maze only allowed for 3 students across, it was wide enough for Peter to flank the 2 foes while Kavar and Hob pressured them with aggressive cuts. Peter grinned, catching one on the arm and the other on the thigh. They panted over the twitching bodies. "Let's go," Kavar said. Their encounter proved a good indication that the flag was not far. The path that Horace had found continued for another 20 paces and exited into the square arena. As Squad 4 approached the end of the path, they could hear the din of raised voices and clanging swords, punctuated by the occasional scream. The orange of the sunrise was now a dark blood red, and while the training blades were dulled enough to only break skin, the way they flashed red impressed Yarick with the illusion that this was not an evaluation, but a bloody fight to the death. Students hacked about as enemy squads tried to gain the pole and raise their flag. When one student reached it, another would slash from the back and take his place. If the flag bearer was lucky enough to have his comrades with him, he might get it up a few feet before it dropped back down. Bodies were piling around the pole. "Form a ring around Yarick," Kavar ordered. "For now we focus on hunting and staying alive. Do not break formation for any reason. Yarick, call out threats. Let's move for the flag, but remember, getting kills and living is more important than getting there. Move!" The ring of students started moving towards the center. "Right!" Yarick called out 2 enemies. The right side of the ring saw them coming and turned to engage, landing cuts without too much trouble. They continued to advance, taking advantage of turned backs. 3 foes fell, crying out as they were struck from behind. They were now less than 10 paces away from the flagpole. It was crowded, and Yarick was busy calling out threats from all directions. The squad mates in front of him were struggling to step over unconscious bodies. Peter cried out and turned to face Yarick, struggling to fight the poison. "Sorry," he managed, and fell. "Close the circle!" The ring went tighter and filled the gap Peter had left. They still weren't moving. "Kavar!" Yarick yelled. "What?" "We need to break formation. We won't make it this way." Kavar grunted and blocked an overhead cut that was thrown at his face. He let it bounce down his angled blade, then lashed out with a quick upward slash. His opponent fell, clutching a lacerated nose. "Kavar! Yeah, Yarick, I heard. What should we do?" Yarick surveyed the carnage. "There! Where those 2 squads are fighting. We make a V and push." He pointed. 2 squads of about 5 students each had just clashed. The battle line was perpendicular to Squad 4, which meant they could drive right in between. Kavar grunted again. "All right, you heard him. Squad 4, move!" They obeyed and formed a V like a gaggle of ragged geese. "Charge!" They ran forward, Kavar at the point, Yarick positioned just behind. They crashed into the line of battle. The unfortunate students who they met first fell with wide eyes. Kavar lashed about, blade flashing red in the sun. Hob and another squad mate, abandoning their sabers, pushed the stumbling and surprised students aside. It all happened in a few seconds. One moment they were charging, the next Kavar, Yarick, and what was left of Squad 4 was emerging on the other side in front of the flag. 2 of them had been left behind in the charge. Yarick tripped over an arm and felt himself caught by a big hand. Hob was smiling at him like an idiot. "We made it, Yarick!" the big student exclaimed. then shuddered as he was slashed from behind. He roared and whirled, grabbed the blade that had hit him, wrenched it from his enemy's grasp, slashed with a vengeful cut, then fell. I can't believe I'm actually glad about how big Hob is, Yarrick thought. Form a circle, now! Kavar's command cut through the din. Yarrick, the flag! Yarrick was fumbling with the clasp. He got it and started wrenching on the rope to raise Squad 4's blue square of cloth. His squad mate gave a shout and fell. The flag was a quarter of the way up. Yarrick was aware of shouts while his two remaining squad mates struggled to keep attackers at bay. The blue square was now halfway up, jumping with every pull on the rope. Another shout. Only Kavar remained, 3/4 of the way. Kavar was yelling and laughing while he danced around the flagpole, whirling his saber in the red glow. He was grazed on the left wrist, then slashed on the right leg, then stabbed in the chest. He fell next to Yarrick and watched the blue square jitter up and ring the bell at the top. The two friends smiled and clasped hands as a ray of light pierced the ubiquitous red glow and shone on the flag as it whipped in the wind. For Maria, Kavar breathed. His grasp went limp. Yarrick held it. For Maria, he echoed.